Charlize Theron speaking Afrikaans, that video got 3 million views. And it got me thinking, since I'm South African and I know where she grew up, what is it about the place you grow up that define who you are?
You grew up on a small farm, is that right, in South Africa?
There's such an enormous contrast between Charlize's current home, I mean she has more than one house in the US, and where she grew up outside Johannesburg. I want to take you there. In this video, I'm going to show you the state of South African cities. And what I mean by that is a lot of places in this country is really not being taken care of because of local government, because of a lack of political will, sometimes because of corruption. But this story isn't about South Africa, it's about where Charlize Theron grew up. And that offers a glimpse into Charlize Theron's humble beginnings. And I think that's why when I interviewed her in this video, she came across as such a genuine, kind, and incredibly humble individual.
Ja, nee, dit is al 'n paar jare.
So the point of this video is really to make a point about a child home and how that has influenced her life.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was raised in South Africa, which couldn't be further away from this by, two parents who had a road construction company.
Charlize Theron grew up in a very simple, very lower middle income neighborhood about an hour's drive outside Johannesburg. It's called Benoni, and if you're South African, you would know that there's a lot of jokes has been made about this suburb.
We had a drive-in theater about it.
In Benoni?
No, it was Benoni's starting to sound really good, don't you think?
Sounding like the Paris of South Africa.
Charlize often says that she grew up on a farm.
What do you do for fun on a small farm in South Africa when, the chores are done,
You've milked the cow.
You've milked the cow.
Now, although it's half an acre, roughly, that's at least my estimate, it's not any kind of farm if you think about, moves like I had a farm in Africa.
I had a farm in Africa.
No, it's not that kind. There's no wild animals. There are geese. She did grow up with a goat, which she called Bok.
I had a couple of goats when I was growing up. His name was Bok, which translates into goat.
Yeah. So you didn't spend a lot of time on the name?
No, not so much.
And there's a lot of ducks. In a few interviews, Charlize has referenced this, how it was her responsibility to take care of the ducks. But this is what you'd call a plot of land. I grew up middle income, white Afrikaans. And if we knew anybody who lived on the outskirts of town who were white and who lived on a plot, we considered them lower middle class. And that's why at the end of my interview with her, when she referenced that she has Al Debo movies.
Ik denk niet allemaal niet, maar ik heb 5 of 6 van Al Debo's films.
That to me was an indication that she's from a different class. Why do I say that? It's not like today I consider myself to be in a high class than her, but South African society in the 70s and 80s specifically was very classist if you were white. Because now remember, the white people tried to establish themselves as more important than everyone else. This was a system of racial segregation, so if you were not white, you were considered to be the lowest of the low. But in order for white people, and specifically Afrikaans people, to exercise their power in society, they defined themselves, or at least they distinguished themselves according to neighborhoods they lived in, according to the church that they attended. So what I'm trying to say is that for Charlize to live on the outskirts of town, on a plot of land, she probably grew up in a pretty poor society.
And I grew up in a really small town, a farm community where I didn't even know about Hollywood.
What was your father's profession?
He was an engineer. When I was about 4, he started his own road construction company.
And your mother's name is?
Gerda.
What?
Gerda.
How do you spell that?
Gerda. It's just Gerda, an American.
I also visited her elementary school so that you can get a sense of what school she went to. This is where she went to school. Obviously, it's changed quite a lot.
I went to an Afrikaans school and got all of my schooling in Afrikaans, had English as a second language, but where I grew up, nobody spoke English, so it was a language that I didn't really speak.
I would watch television, American television, 24/7.
And that's what you would watch that and you would learn English from that?
Oh, yeah.
What kind of shows?
Oh, everything. Dynasty, Dallas, Love Boat. You know, everything you can imagine.
You learned English from the Love Boat.
Oh, yeah.
Living in a big piece of land, far from town, far from school, it probably ignited with her as it did for me. And I think, for a lot of kids who grow up as single kids or just being the odd one out, spend a lot of time by yourself and a lot of time in your imagination. And I assume that was also a pretty isolating experience for her as a child.
I was an only child, growing up on this farm. My imagination sometimes got the best of me, and sometimes it was hard to kind of settle me because, things kind of got a little crazy in my head sometimes.
Maybe that is part of her success and her resilience, and the fact that she was able to go out there as a teenager, really, and make a name for herself in Hollywood.
In 300 meters, at the roundabout, take the third exit.
Two things when you arrive at Charlize's childhood home that made me realize this is actually a good example of what has become of South Africa. The roads are in terrible condition. Security is also obviously always something that comes up when you talk about residential areas in South Africa or just general life. So this plot of land is surrounded by steel fencing. There are electric fencing on the other, and there are these concrete blocks on one corner. Now, obviously, maybe most of these fences weren't around when she grew up. Who knows? There are, however, stories, if you Google and try and find out more about this house, about a man who was killed in the exact same place that Charlize grew up.
The actress famously witnessed her mother shoot her father to death in alleged self-defense when Charlize was only 15 years old. And now, her old South African home where the killing took place has bizarrely become a new scene of terror, where the owner has reportedly been tortured and murdered by 5 suspected burglars. Although the actress willingly spoke out about her traumatic experience in 2004, it's not like it's a hot topic on the red carpet.
How do you come from something like that?
It feels like people want that to be the thing that defines me. And maybe the reason that I am as healthy about it is because I won't let something like that define me. I don't know how I feel about the whole marriage thing.
Well, your mom and dad, were they married?
Yes, yes. Maybe that's why I don't know how I feel about it.
She's obviously had a very difficult childhood, just considering the stories that she's spoken about.
I have vivid memories from being, very young, going to auctions. And that's just a blast. Have you ever been to
what kind of auctions?
Like farm auctions, where they auction off tractors and live
Wait, that's when a farmer is has lost his farm. They're auctioning off the stuff out from under him. That's how you had a good time as a kid?
It was great. It was fabulous.
The school she went to, the neighborhood she lived in, pretty Afrikaans. This is as Afrikaans as it gets. And so everybody who keeps on commenting on my interview with her saying, oh, she can't speak Afrikaans, she doesn't know what she's talking about, that's rubbish. Part of the property was also bought by a couple who it seemed like they tried to turn this property into some kind of a museum or an attraction of some kind, because what they found is on one of the doors inside the house, or on one of the walls at least, Charlize visited and put down her signature and a little message. Now, I visited being optimistic, thinking that maybe I'd be given a tour of the property. That didn't happen. Oftentimes when people grow up in small towns, their biggest dream is just to escape and to make something of themselves elsewhere.
I don't want you to think because of where you come from and because you're from a rural community in a small town that you can't have what other kids have.
And there must have been numerous challenges that influenced her life and her outlook on where she wanted to be. I believe that's really what set her on the path of amazing success and where she is today.
You've made a foreign farm girl from South Africa feel very much at home, and this is my home now.
So if you compare where she came from and if you look at where she is today, whether that's professional success, whether that's solely comparing the house she lived in to what she's been able to afford and live in today, to me that says this is someone with resilience, perseverance, with determination. And that kind of personality and that kind of person that you become is obviously inspired in some way by your childhood home.